friends, welcome back or welcome if you're new here. My name is Stacy and I am the Chapter Conundrum. And today I have a really short tag video for y'all. It is the Reading Ticks tag. And this was originally created by Kevin Toole, so I'll definitely link his original video down in the description. And I was tagged to do this by Josh over at Already Overbooked, so I'll also go ahead and tag his video down below. And if you haven't watched his yet, definitely go watch his because he frames it in a way that's very entertaining and excellent. He went all out. I'm just gonna sit here and answer the questions very basically, but he got a lot more creative with this, so definitely if you haven't watched his, go watch his too. So the first question is, do you only read at a specific time of day? And my answer to this is kind of. I pretty much never read when I first wake up. I'm somebody who has to sit there on the couch and just kind of like couch rot looking at reels or something for like about an hour with some coffee before I have the brain capacity to retain information that I'm reading, unless I'm like super well rested and my body just wakes up naturally after like 9 or 10 hours of sleep. So yeah, first thing in the morning is very hard for me to get reading done. Maybe if it's something really simple that has like no density at all. However, I do still read throughout the day or in the evening. Evening is definitely my favorite time of day to read. I get the best reading done after Jake, my husband, has already fallen asleep because he goes to bed early and wakes up early, but I am a night owl. So usually I have a good few solid hours after he's fallen asleep that I get my best reading done in. Question 2 is, do you prefer to read in your work or everyday clothes, or are you more partial to reading in your PJs or comfy clothes? And for me, my everyday clothes are fairly comfy already, so I'm definitely happy to read either in my everyday clothes or in my PJs. If I'm reading during the day, I will read in my everyday clothes. But one of my favorite things to do, especially because Jake goes to bed so early, is once my evening routine is done, like once we've had dinner, the dishes are done, the dogs have been walked, whatever else needs doing is done, I like to get my pajamas on early and go to bed early and just read for several hours. So I guess both, just depends on what time of day it is. Question 3 is, what is your favorite reading spot? Do you love the couch? Do you have a chair? Do you read outside? Do you read in bed? For me, I do the vast majority of my reading either on the couch or in bed. I am a big audiobook reader, so I definitely am up and about while I'm listening as well. Like I usually don't have to put the book down and pause to do whatever I need to do. But most of my favorite things to pair with audiobooks, other than like household chores, are things like playing a game on my phone or working on something on my computer. And I have one of those like lap desks, so I do most of that either in bed or on the couch. Question 4 is, do you snack while reading, or is this a no-go? And my answer to this is it really depends what it is. Most of the time, I probably won't snack while I'm reading. If it's anything like messy or that I have to crunch for, it's a no-go. I don't want to be getting food smears on my pages. And if I'm doing an audiobook and I have earbuds in, when I'm crunching, it makes it very hard to concentrate and listen to the audiobook. So I can do it if it's like not messy and not crunchy. But most of the time, I'm gonna put down my book. Question 5 is, do you or have you ever peeked at the end of a book, or do you avoid spoilers at all costs? So most of the time I absolutely don't peek in the end of a book. The only time I kind of do this is if I'm contemplating potentially DNFing. Sometimes if I'm kind of in that stretch, looking at the end will help me decide, is this a journey worth following, or does basically nothing that I'm interested in happen towards the end as well? I'm not super spoiler averse. Like if I accidentally get spoiled for something in a book I am interested in, I'm not going to be like super mad about it. The only time it would really upset me is if it's like one of my all-time favorite series. So like for example, if Red Rising 7 drops and I don't read it right away and somebody spoils something massive in there for me, like I'm going to be upset about that. So don't do that. But for most books or series, I'm not super spoiler averse. Like I don't go looking for them, but I'm also not mad if I find them. And I do find that when I am spoiled for something, it usually typically doesn't make me not want to read a book anymore. And sometimes it can make me more interested in reading a book because I'll be trying to figure out, oh, how did we get here based on the premise? Question 6 is, do you prefer first-person narrative, third-person narrative, or you don't care? And for me, I like them both in their own way. One of the things I absolutely love in books, if you haven't seen that video, is a very emotional, reactive character. And I tend to find that I get that a lot more in first person. But there are also other elements that I really love in third-person narrative books, like more of an epic scope or having a sense about how multiple characters are feeling about a situation and getting multiple perspectives on an issue. So definitely they both have merit. They both can work for me. I like them both. Question 7 is, do you read dedications, author's notes, and acknowledgements? And for me, I'm going to say it depends. I pretty much always read dedications because they are almost always at the beginning of a book, but I am iffy on whether I'm going to read an acknowledgement or an author's note. So the cases where I absolutely will read an author's note is if I love a book or if it's an indie book. Because typically I find with traditionally published books, the acknowledgements often are like the author listing a bunch of people that they're grateful for in their publishing house or their editor or like whoever. But in indie books, the acknowledgements are always more interesting for me. And then author's notes, I think it depends. If I have enjoyed the book, then yes, absolutely, I'm going to read the author's note because I'm going to want a bit more of an idea about like why they chose to write about this or what they have to say about it. If I give a book like 3 stars, I'm probably not going to bother reading the author's note. But then again, if it's an indie book, I'm more likely to read the author's note. Question 8 is, do you have a favorite reading beverage? And this to me depends on the season. So if it is summer, definitely just water. If it is winter or like fall and it's kind of chilly, my favorite is a hot cup of tea. And I'm not even really fussy on the tea as long as there's like some kind of sweetness to it and it doesn't taste gross, tea. But I'm also definitely not opposed to a good cup of hot chocolate either. Question 9 is, how do you decide what to read next? Do you follow a TBR? Do you mood read? Do you follow reading goals? Do you just randomly choose? And for me, it's kind of a mix. So I'm going to call myself out here. This is partly why Jake will tell you that I am a conundrum and how I got my channel name. I am somebody who can follow a TBR for about 1.5 years, and I follow it well for the most part. But then I get to a point where I just all out rebel. Like I don't want to be reading anything on my TBR. And I just struggle to get invested in reading. Or I'll get overwhelmed by how behind I get on my TBRs. And then I'll just have this thing where I'm like, nope, no TBRs for the next however long. And usually about 6 months I'll go without any kind of TBR. And then by the end of those 6 months, I'm like, oh, I miss making progress on my reading goals. And I miss doing buddy reads that I plan ahead for. And then I go back to TBRs. So I'm definitely a conundrum in that I like both TBRs and mood reading. But I do find that when I have a large TBR and it encompasses multiple genres, it is easier for me because then I can mood read off my TBR. So typically the book I tackle next is chosen for one of 3 reasons. One is that it's a buddy read of some kind and my buddy or group is interested in starting it already, or some of them already have started and finished it. And so I'll want to get active in the chat and talk about it. The other reason is if it's a book that I know both my husband Jake and I are planning to read that month and he's busy with something else and I have time to read that one next, I will do so that we don't get to the end of the month, realize we still have the same book left on our TBR and have to compete for time with that book to read it. The third thing is I use my library a lot, especially Libby. So oftentimes my next read can be determined by how much loan time I have left on a book or what hold from the library is coming in. And if I have none of those factors to consider or worry about, it's just what am I in the mood to read on my TBR list. And then lastly, question 10 is to tag some others. And I'm going to go ahead and tag my husband, Jake, the bookish drummer, because he and I definitely have some different reading habits. So I think it'll be interesting for you guys to kind of hear from both of us and compare how different we are in certain respects. And I also want to tag Ian over at Ian the Reader and Josephine over at Fina Reads. So that was it for today's video. Let me know down below in the comments, did any of my answers today surprise you guys in any way? Do you find yourselves having the same habits or doing the same things? And if not, I'm curious to hear your answer to question 7, which is, do you read the acknowledgements, dedication, and author's notes? Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out if you want to, and have a great day. Bye!